my pleasure to welcome you all to this book release event. I thank you for being here with us today. The Department of English has the distinction of being one of the oldest departments in the university, and we take pride in upholding the legacy of academic excellence bequeathed to us. Over the years, we have strived to maintain academic standards by constant expansion of our teaching and research programs. I take pride in stating that the department, in its pursuit of keeping pace with evolving global paradigms in literary studies, we cater to a wide spectrum of research areas like gender studies, contemporary critical theory, and trauma studies. In order to ensure a comprehensive and holistic academic development, we supplement regular teaching and research activities with online lectures, seminars, and workshops. The department organized several successful events in this academic year, including a 3-day lecture series by Professor Craig Brandist, senior faculty at the University of Sheffield, 2 national-level collaborative workshops, one on academic writing with Ashoka University, and the second on disability studies with the Center for Disability Research and Training, Kirori College, University of Delhi. We also entered into a first-of-its-kind formal MOU with the CDRT for promoting sensitization on disability-related issues. Since its inception, one of the focus areas of the department has been literary translation, and we have a long and distinct tradition of producing translations of some important literary texts from Kashmiri to English. Some of the notable works include translations of Rasul Mir, Haba Khatun, and Nund Rishi, done by former faculty members, Professor Jia Malik and Professor Mohammad Amin. Taking this legacy forward, our present faculty is consistently engaged in translation and have produced notable works of literary translation. Professor Nusrat is an acclaimed translator of Kashmiri short fiction and poetry and has a range of translated works to her credit. As former head of the department, she initiated a translation project on Rahman Rahi, which was a collective effort by faculty at the department and an eminent team from outside the university to translate one of Kashmir's greatest living poets, because Rahi Saab was alive when the project was undertaken in late 2021, into English. The Rahi project was a labor of love. As well as a tribute to Rahi Saab's colossal contribution to Kashmiri language and literature, it was also an act of preservation, of archiving, and reclaiming one's literary past, which often drowns in the din of mainstream literary production.
Indeed, a very different program. At the end of the year 2023, almost, which I have attended, and believe me, from core of my heart, I congratulate the Department of English by not going into that routine type of programs, workshops, seminar, like that, a very different program and need of the hour, the type of work which you have done. And for this, I really congratulate Department of English, which has had a long and rich legacy in our, University of Kashmir, not only University of Kashmir, but whole UT of J&K being one of the best departments. So many pass-outs who have come out from this rich department are now in different sectors contributing, and I'm sure in future also there's a great role for this department to play, and translation is an important aspect of literacy studies and has grown into a full-fledged discipline. Translation enables cross-cultural dialogues and fosters a deeper appreciation of diverse literary traditions and culture. I'm happy that Faculty of English is engaged in quality translation, especially Professor Mudassir has played a great role. I really congratulate him for his good work and expect that in future also such type of work will be done in, association with his other colleagues who have equally done commendable work. Today's event is a tribute to Kashmir's literary icon Gani Kashmiri, Mahmud Gami and Rahman Rahi. This will help to promote indigenous literature and widen its audience who need to know much more about these three great poets. We also hope that this will create a space for Kashmiri literature on the world literary map and give it due recognition. Atashitur is an Urdu translation of the Diwan of Tahir Ghani Kashmiri, the celebrated Persian poet of Kashmir, with an introduction and explanatory notes to the verses. It is the first ever Urdu translation of the complete Diwan of Ghani. I congratulate again Professor Mufti for it. I'm sure by these types of work, not only the Department of English, not only the translators, but even University of Kashmir and overall the UT of J&K will become more visible by doing these types of literary work at the world map. And I'm sure in many scholars outside our own country, it will create lots of interest to read about the works of these three great poets, which while listening to Professor Mudassir, Professor Nusrat and Professor Ifat is beyond any religion. Whatever I could feel is just the love for their humanity, which expresses their thought, whether it's country or whether any other idea. A very good publication, a publication of the Penguin books in its prestigious Black Classics list presents one of the preeminent points of Kashmiri language, Mahmud Gami, to the English readers. The book offers a substantial corpus of Mahmud Gami's poetry, around 2750 verses, with the comprehensive introduction, and is first of its kind on Gami. I'm sure it must have been very difficult tasks to work on this task. I wonder, the type of consistency, the type of dedication which they have shown by translating these works of these three great poets. I really congratulate them for this commendable job. It also adds to one thing. One thing is that it adds to the type of ambience that the Department of English has created. Their teachers have created in the department, engrossed in doing literary work, and I'm sure that it will be transferred to the students, and many of your students will be further engaged in these types of work after seeing your legacy. The Department of English also have done a remarkable job pertaining to the translation of Rahman Rai's poetry. In my thoughts, Rahman Rai is always there because Moj Kashir is his one of the tasks which he has given to University of Kashmir. For this, University of Kashmir will remember him till this world is there in his poetry, Moj Kashir. And when we see the translation of this Moj Kashir, although we all know the language of Kashmiri, but still Professor Shok Saab said, some of the words which he has used, difficult to understand, which we can understand when we see the translation in English. It's also translated into Hindi now, it's translated into Urdu also. So for that he'll be remembered in University of Kashmir always. The Vyeth is Not Asleep is surely a remarkable contribution to scholarship on contemporary Kashmiri literature, presenting Rahi, a difficult poet by any standards, in lucid and highly readable translations, which will go a long way in making him accessible to readers both within and outside Kashmir. And I would definitely like that Department of English in future also try to do this type of work, choose other poets also. We should also, like Professor Nidja Matuji said about the various other poets, Nusraji was saying, telling me just now, she's also working on the works of, Mr. Dinanath and others, Hari Krishan Cole and others. We also need to translate their work also, so that our youth knows how the multicultural, multi-religious type of literary, type of a work was done in Kashmir, and our youth should be well aware of it. Once again, with these words, congratulations to all the three great professors of English here on the dais for their good work, and definitely whatever is needed from the administration of University of Kashmir in future also to do any type of work, always there for any funding or anything, because this needs to be documented and needs to be read by our younger generation. Thank you very much.
Translating anything, especially the literary works, it's not an easy task. Say, two things have to be taken into consideration: the source which we are translating, exactly what the author wants to communicate. The translator has to be honest enough. Firstly, deliberately, he won't make any attempt to communicate, to convey it in such a way that it will convey something different. And sometimes inadvertently, things happen so that what we wanted to communicate, something else gets communicated. So keeping that thing, it's not merely the hold on language or a rich vocabulary which is sufficient for translation. There is something else which is required there. If I'm allowed, I will quote one incident. Aligarh Day is celebrated all over the world. Every year, people in Aligarhians who are pass-outs of Aligarh, they celebrate Aligarh Day in different parts of the world. Once here in Srinagar, Aligarh Day was being celebrated, and one of the pass-outs, alumni of the university, he was narrating his experiences with the audience. And he narrated, एक वाक़ा बयान कर रहे थे कि when we were residing in a hostel in Aligarh Muslim University, and we used to get milk in the morning. Vendor used to deliver it in the morning, and after completion of month, we used to pay him the money. One of the persons, money was delivered to him late by say 10 days or 15 days, but the vendor frequently asked him, "Bhai, mera paisa de do. I am a poor man. I have to bring feed and other inputs for my cow." So he said, "Don't worry, I will pay your money, don't worry." So one day that person he lost his temper. "I have been requesting you time and again, you pay my money." And he said, "But don't worry, आपका पैसा मैं दूध से धो कर दूंगा, घुटने की कसम खाकर कहता हूं मैं." So the person got annoyed, by he just withfolded, "Bhai, ऐसा नहीं करना, पैसे मेरे खराब हो जाएंगे." So the person wanted to communicate, he wanted to assure him. जैसे हम कश्मीरी में कहते हैं, "भैया, be sure that I will pay your money." He wanted to give him the assurance. लेकिन उसने कहा, "मैं दूध से धोकर आपके पैसे दूंगा." So same is the difficulty of translation. So you can understand how much difficulty the team would have faced in translating these things. And then the work of those legendary poets whose work has been translated, I think a lot of responsibility lies on our colleagues who have taken up this assignment of translating the work of these legendary figures of this region. Many times some people say, राही साहब को कहते हैं कि कश्मीर का गालिब है, but there are certain instances where you will feel Rahi is ahead of Ghalib. होए हम जो मर के रुसवा होए कि न घर के दरिया, न कहीं जनाजा उठता, न कहीं मज़ार होता. Ghalib says like this, a sort of डर he expresses in his poetry. अब देख लीजिए राही साहब कैसे मौत को भी चकमा देने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. He wants to bluff death also. क्या ये मर्गुक युकनिया मित मूल प्रटित अखरस, क्या बह यमुना योर अद फेरित जहाई, क्या बह वुशना दुनियु गाशी पतोला कंजा, क्या मैं बनना जहत यथ सुन लां कि पे शामन बिहुन मौत किस अथ पिंजरस छना अडवस्त रोजान दर जा हाय अथ संगीन कलायस सब्दिना वल वल शिगाफ वाय कर गछ अथ तिलिस मातस ननर कर गसन अजलिक त अदनिक नक्त हल पट केम सिंद पट कर गछ मौत पन्नी कार सजी मंज असीर जिंदगानी कर सब्द हासिल कमाल कर इंसानस बनन वन लाजवाल just see how Rahi wants to bluff the death. So these things need to be communicated, carried outside this valley, outside Kashmir. So I think this is very essential. It's a responsibility on our, say, people from the Department of English. With these words, I thank all of you.
Happy to be a part of this event today because translation is very close to my heart. And I have done a little bit that I could, but I am today absolutely impressed with the remarkable work done by the department in initiating this project and seeing to its conclusion in such a marvelous way. You see, Kashmiri literature is so rich, and there is always the temptation to let it be shared by other people who don't know the language. And we must admit here that the first people who recognized the work of Kashmiri literature and tried to translate them were foreigners. The first person was Grierson, who translated Lal Ded. Then he was followed by other Orientalists. And also a kind of remarkable work was done by Professor J.L.L. Kaul, who is not very well known today, but he was the one who not only wrote a book on Lal Ded, but did a remarkable work called Kashmiri Lyrics, which was published in the 1940s. And it collected all the lyrical poetry of Kashmir that he could find through his research and painstaking, labor to collect these things and put them in a book which was called Kashmiri Lyrics, which is unfortunately out of print today, but the Sahitya Academy brought out an edition recently under their aegis of classical works. So there is a reprint available. So I would like the younger people to know about the work that has been done earlier. And then there was also this anthology by T.N. Rana, Modern Kashmiri Verse, in which he has translated Mahjur, Dinanat Nadim, and I don't remember now whether Rahi is included, but Abdul Ahad Azad and other poets also. So I don't know whether young people are aware of this work. And now I must also confess that when we were growing up, it's not a confession, but it's a proud admission that when we were growing up, we grew up with the anthems of Mahjur, Dinanat Nadim, Abdul Ahad Azad and others, and we sang their songs. They were familiar to us, but at that time we didn't realize that they had to be translated. This wish came much later. And you see, about translation, it's not an easy task. You may feel, I know how much labor must have gone into the production of these volumes here, but the point is that you have to submerge yourself. You have to forget your own identity when you are translating. You have to be very humble, very, very faithful, and project yourself into the thought processes, the emotional responses, as well as the sensibilities of the original poet. And Kashmiris themselves can understand all the nuance, thought, everything in their own poets, and they can then also do it in other languages, as this our Mufti Mudassir has done in Urdu. We translated Ghani into Urdu. And he has also tried to keep the meter and the rhythm intact, which as a reader of poetry, I liked very much, because you have to have the emotional content as well as the sound of it the way the lines flow, all that has been retained by him in the translation. I wish the department great success in their forthcoming ventures. They have done an excellent job. They deserve congratulations for it.
We are assembled here to release 3 books that are directly an outcome of the brilliant teachers of the university. The Weth is Not Asleep, Yusuf's Fragrance, and Atishe-Tur. The 3 books are a significant contribution to the world literature and at the same time appreciation of the creative talent of the 3 poets. It is my unshakable belief that any postgraduate department of Kashmir University can prove its relevance only when it is organically related to the Kashmiri people, Kashmiri language, people's growth as a people, and the fauna and flora, geography, and other things of Kashmir. Only then can a postgraduate department of this university justify its existence on the campus. I am happy that the Department of English has been justifying its existence under the able guidance of its highly talented teachers like Dr. M.S. Want, Professor T.G. Raman, Professor Ghulam G.K. Das, Professor A.N. Dhar, Professor J.R. Malik, Professor Muhammad Amin, Professor T.N. Rana, and Hamid Dar, and Hamida Banu, and Lily Want. The first little I shall briefly talk about is translation of Rahman Rai's poetry, a challenging task that was accomplished by a team of talented translators. I have the honor of being one of the team. It hardly needs any rhetoric to say that Professor Rahman Rahi was one of the most eminent poets and writers of the post-1947 era. He, unlike his eminent contemporaries, reached the pinnacle of success in his career, like getting the first Gyanpith Award in Kashmiri and many other poetry awards and honors. His fame among the recent poets too was unparalleled. Rahi, at the same time, happens to be the least known poet. Rahi, at the same time, happens to be the least known poet. Whatever fame among the non-specialist audiences he enjoys is primarily based on a few love lyrics sung by some of the most talented singers of the valley. What he owned as his most representative poetry is considered too difficult to read and is hence avoided by common readers. Only an adequate translation could overcome this obstacle between Rahi and his readers. His complexity lies in his style, as he consciously used ambiguity as a poetic merit. The use of what he called creative use of words, takhliki vartav, draws upon allusions from myths and other literary works and collocations and merger of contexts. The complexity is further heightened as there is no use of what we call izafat in Persian and Urdu poetry. We instead use the ablative inflections of the adjectives. Here is just one line to make it clear. Bal palamiz kanajan hundrasishit pompur akayal tapu chusinit chuvirgat walr guti hens garde wuzumli wurja tharbet serious zitsans love other tarak fulai what patik pe posh kotar grayo hunduvan gugu. My old, he is no more now, late, and that used to ask me generally, whenever we are together, hey, Shafi, tell me, ये रोही कशर पशी लेखन कशर पर दोन मन अख लफ्ज देता बस कशर बोला मगर तुम सोचना कहीं तरह फिक्र सारने यह हाल तो सारने हुन The team of translators confronted this kind of unfamiliar Rahian style and revealed the meaning of underneath incomprehensible poems of Rahi. The collection, this line took more than 5 hours. I and Ifadji, Professor Ifad, sat together to make every word comprehensible and meaningful. The team of translators confronted this kind of unfamiliar Rahian style and revealed the meaning of underneath incomprehensible poems of Rahi. The collection, meaningfully titled "The Veth is Not Asleep," is sure to resolve the formidable ambiguity of his style and make him more readable through translations. The usefulness of the book is enhanced manifold by including the original Kashmiri text face to face with the English version. Rahi would have been elated and lived longer if he saw this book. He loved, rather adored, and deified his Kashmiri language as a fetish, as if it existed physically, as an entity. No one could convince him that no language has physical existence. I assert it. No language has any physical existence. It is a continuum. So it cannot be a fetish. But only is a continuation of its use in life. Mahmud Ghami, rightly considered the father of Kashmiri literature, has been the most popular Kashmiri Sufi poet. There is hardly any Kashmiri who does not sing inwardly, at least in the bathroom, Kato Shuknandabani, Waloma Shukman. Like songs, hundreds of songs like that. Every Kashmiri sings such songs. He introduced various genres of Persian poetry in Kashmiri, and the fact is that no one could vie his perfection, though his themes and expressions were imitated by many of his successors. He enjoyed tremendous popularity even in his own time, so much so that one of his mystic masnavis, as Professor Mufti Sahib informed you, titled Yusuf Zulaikha, was translated into Latin by Karl Bochwald. His poetry was not only sung by common masses in all towns and villages of the valley, but also by the leading singers of many ages. The manuscripts of his works were prepared by various pen men and circulated among the masses as very precious gifts. Soon after the advent of the printing press, his works were repeatedly published and sold. When his long as well as short works were edited by late Naji Munawwar, who happens to be my brother, under the title Kuliyat-e Mahmud Ghami, and published in 1977 by the Academy of Art, Culture and Languages. Professor Mufti Sahab deserves highest acclaim in selecting the works of Mahmud Ghami for translation and getting it published and by prestigious international publishers. Again, Professor Mufti Sahab deserves approbation for translating the poems of the most renowned Kashmiri Persian poet, namely Mullah Tahir Ghani, into Urdu prose. The book's titled Atish-e-Tur, The Fire of the Mount Sinai, is very popular among the lovers of Ghani Kashmiri, and they pray for Mufti Mudassir in making Ghani's poetry accessible without any specialization in Persian, in Urdu. The Quranic expression Al-Bahr Al-Masjur, he burned Tur with the oceans, is the essence of the Atish-e-Tur. The translation once again proves that inter-language translations are always possible and is a necessity, particularly here in Kashmir, where every Kashmiri is bound to know at least 5 languages.
Since most of our students are unable to read Kashmiri, English translations offer a fair substitute. Apart from teaching local literatures in translation, English departments have the added responsibility of making translations of indigenous literary works available. In fact, in the current times, doing so speaks of the vibrancy and relevance of these departments. When I took over as head of the department in 2021, I was keenly aware of this responsibility towards my own literary archive. Though Kashmir boasts of a long and rich literary heritage, its literature, which dates back to the 12th century, remains largely unknown outside its boundaries. I thought of initiating translation projects. Projects, I think, was a little too ambitious, but I managed to have one project complete that could help create some space for Kashmiri literature in the world literary landscape and expand its reach. As Professor Ifat mentioned, some of us have been involved in translation work at individual levels, but I wanted this to be a departmental venture, a collaborative enterprise. When I discussed this idea with my faculty, they were extremely appreciative and supportive. For starters, we decided to translate poetry, well aware that it is a difficult genre to translate. In fact, one question that often raises its head time and again is whether poetry can be translated, or more importantly, whether all poetry can be translated. However, we were ready to take on the challenges and embark on a quest to explore the secrets woven within verses. Poets like Sheikhul Alam, Haba Khatun had been translated by our esteemed teachers. We decided to translate a contemporary poet. The natural choice was the highly acclaimed Rahman Rahi. Winner of many awards, including the Gyanpith, we felt that Rahi should be made accessible to a wider audience. In fact, he deserves a global readership, which could only be ensured through an English translation of his poems. Within Kashmiri literary circles, Rahi is considered a difficult poet. Translating him was not going to be easy. A bit apprehensive, we decided to seek guidance from Professor Shafi Shaw, former head of the Department of Kashmiri, University of Kashmir. A distinguished critic, author, and translator, Professor Shaw has not only read and taught Rahi, but has shared a personal relationship with him. Professor Shaw's command over Kashmiri language and his nuanced understanding of Rahi's poetry made him an excellent advisor. I wish to put on record the department's gratitude to Professor Shaw for his help. On a more personal note, I would like to express my deep appreciation to him for his prompt responses to my countless messages and emails, and his cheerful acceptance of our many invitations to visit the department to read or discuss Rahi. I also take this opportunity to thank my team of translators. Apart from Professor Ifat, Professor Mudassir, and Dr. Tasleem, my very dear colleagues from the department, I involved some more people in this project. Dr. Abid Ahmed, Dr. Shabir Hussain, Dr. Ashik Hussain, Dr. Huzaifa Pandit, and Ms. Hina Khan, all of you deserve my special thanks. Except for Ms. Hina, others have been former students or research scholars of the department. The whole team was united by their love for Kashmiri language and literature and their belief that translation is the best service we can render to our mother tongue. With Professor Shaw's help, we selected poems from Rahi's 2 anthologies, Nauroz-e Sabah, published in 1958, and Siya-Rud Jaranmans, published in 1997, representing Rahi's major themes and stylistic strategies. Each translator was given a set of poems to translate, which I and my co-editor, Professor Mudassir, meticulously revised and edited later. Aware that the translator is a creative reader, aware also of the inherent fluidity of poetry that sometimes tempts one to take liberties, we tried hard not to steer away from our aim of being faithful to the original while making the translations enjoyable to the reader. We knew we were negotiating a difficult terrain. The very act of writing poetry is to translate the language of one's dream, one could say one's very self, into the language of the text. Translating that text then becomes the art of retelling the ineffable and comes with a lot of responsibility. I use the term responsibility very consciously. Responsibility does not mean literality. It means being mindful of the body, soul, and cultural context of the original. even if the original is not accessible to the reader of the translation. The translator becomes a mediator between the reader and the author. I am reminded of Amar Aziz's remarks about the ironic nature of triumphant translation. Aziz is the first to render the Urdu poet John Elia's poetry into English. A triumphant translation, according to him, often erases the translator. A good translation can only exist in the absence of its translator. It makes their work unseen, introducing the author to a new audience. The Veth is not asleep is our attempt to introduce Rahi to a new audience. Existentially despairing, densely symbolic, and highly elusive, Rahi defines the contours of modern Kashmiri poetry. Drawing upon both the Eastern and Western traditions, his poems are filled with allusions from diverse cultural contexts. A love poet par excellence, Rahi also engages with the essential inscrutability and mystery of human existence. Sometimes he finds solace in the beauty of nature, at other times he boldly confronts a Sisyphean sense of futility and nullity. Haunted by the fear of death, Rahi tries through his poems to hold captive the fleeting moments of time. I leave it to the readers to discover and unravel the layered richness of Rahi's poetry. Speaking for myself, I found the experience of reading and translating Rahi a stimulating and enriching one. His poetry resonated with me at an emotional, visceral, I could even say a primal level. More than anything else, I was struck by Rahi's passionate love for his homeland, his Moj Kashir, and his mother tongue, Koshur. As you all know, it was Rahi who institutionalized Kashmiri. Not only was he instrumental in setting up the Kashmiri department in the university, but it was his efforts that made Kashmiri a compulsory subject in schools. He tirelessly tried to revive a language that had fallen into neglect, transforming his spoken language into a poetic language, fashioning at the same time an indigenous critical idiom. I'm sure some of you know that Rahi was not only a poet, but also a literary critic, and he has written a few books of criticism.